Chapter 17. The disciples and followers of Yahushua began to assemble in Capernaum to make arrangements for the journey to Jerusalem. When Yahushua and some of the 12 who were with him came to the city, it was the 12th month. And the collector of taxes came to Kepha and said, "Is your master liable to pay the dues?" Kepha replied, "No, for he pays the tax imposed on strangers, but he will not make issue over the matter." So 3 of the disciples went down to the waters and caught several large fish, which they sold in the market. Then Kepha took the money to the collector of taxes, who tested the pieces and found them good. Yahushua was standing nearby, and, noticing how adulterated money and coins below weight were rejected, he said to his disciples, "Be like the honest coin testers, though testing men instead of money. Weigh all things with care, using a fair set of scales. Reject all which is impure or not what it should be, keeping only that which is good. As there are counterfeit coins, so are there counterfeit deeds, and they are equally hard to detect. Take people as you find them, but reserve judgment until they have been tested. All men are friends in a boat sailing before a fair wind, but when a squall comes and it sinks, the true are divided from the false." A man stopped Yahushua in the street and said, "They say you know the will of Elohim. What does he require of me?" Yahushua said, "Did not your father Moshe say, 'Hear, my people, for this is what your Elohim requires of you, that you honor him, following his path and loving him, serving him with all your heart and soul, and keeping his divine utterances and Torah?'" About this time, Reuben, son of Jaros, who had followed Yahushua since the healing of his sister, came to him and said, "Master, my heart is troubled, for I wish to marry, and if I do this, I cannot remain with you." Yahushua said, "Life is a race where every day the hurdles of decision have to be jumped. You must decide one way or the other, and with finality, having no regrets later. It is well you spoke, for the sun should never set on an indecision. When marriage and duty oppose each other, then a man must choose duty and a woman marriage. But when marriage can be combined with a diminished obligation to duty, this course is not denied to a man. However, marriage is not the least of life's crosses, and any who enter it thinking otherwise fall beneath the unexpected burden. If your wife is chosen wisely, you will possess a treasure beyond price, but if foolishly you are condemned to a burden of sorrow. Go with my blessing. Have many children and bring them up in the light. Thus, you will serve best, and I leave my cause in good hands." Yahushua said to some disciples later in the day, "In the holy books it is written, 'Bearer of good tidings, go into the mountains and lift up your voice with power, crying through all Yehudah and Jerusalem, hail your Elohim and your deliverer.'" Yahushua and his followers took a boat and came to the outlet of the waters, where the others stayed 7 days while Yahushua fasted. After he returned, the disciples said, "Master, we are concerned, for you spend too much time in solitude and fast too long. Surely this will harm you." Yahushua replied, "When fasting is properly undertaken, it can do nothing except good. Also, the body is like a pitcher which, containing water, must be emptied before it will hold wine. So it is with the Ruach HaKodesh. Did not Moshe fast for 40 days, during which time the Ruach HaKodesh flowed into him so his face shone before the people like a great light? Such is the nature of the power, and because of its brightness he had to veil it. Likewise with Eliyahu, who fasted 40 days. Do you think those two suffered harm, or did they benefit through a strengthening of the Ruach? This you must always remember. When the corn is ripe for cutting, the harvesters come, and it is gathered in, but though it die, many ears have ripened on the stalk. And from these will spring other plants. You are the ripening grain. Go forth and sow the field in which will grow plants bringing the rule of Elohim into being. For then men will be ruled with justice and goodwill, the rich serving according to their endowments, and no man will be idle or wasteful. Now, the wickedness of men is like a canopy over a garden, shutting out the fertilizing rain so it cannot nourish the plants beneath. Therefore, they wither away. If the canopy remains, the ground becomes bare and barren. Yet it needs only the removal of the canopy to make the ground blossom forth into fruitfulness. Such is the nature of the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. One of the disciples said, "We have seen that the power is a miraculous thing, but the effort is beyond many of us." Yahushua said, "That is the hair in the dough. Apathy must be overcome and effort expended." Kepha said, "We go to Yerushalayim. What if the people call on you to lead them into battle? Surely you will not ignore their cry." Yahushua said, "O Kepha, so long with me, yet still confusing the ways of Yahweh with those of men. Taking up the sword is the easy way, for it is more difficult to peacefully change the hearts of men than to impose a change by violence. Those who must resort to violence are lesser men than those who convert through example and teaching. Is it not written in the holy books? Those who seek wisdom as others seek riches will certainly come to an understanding of the ways of Yahweh. And this knowledge delivers them from the darkness of ignorance." During the heat of the day, Yahushua was invited into a rich man's house. And the man of many privileges asked him, "Why do you prefer to speak in the alleyways and among the poor? Surely it would be better to convert the influential people." Yahushua said, "I speak to those who listen, and they are found among the poor. The rich are so busy acquiring worldly wealth and chasing fleeting pleasure that they have no time for more important things. They are fattening geese waddling through lush pastures, simply eating and sleeping in content, unconcerned for the coming day when they themselves will be consumed." The rich man said, "Where is the kingdom of heaven, and how do I get there?" Yahushua said, "The road starts within yourself, but to find it you must abide by the Torah as written in the books of wisdom. For knowledge of the Torah provides a true and clear picture of yourself. Just as a mirror reflects back a true image, so does the Torah when studied diligently. Let this be your guiding light. Take no thought for tomorrow, whether it bring good or bring evil. The cares of the day are sufficient, and the Torah will sustain you." The man said, "Would it not be more profitable if you showed how to extend our days?" Yahushua said, "What benefit would a longer life bestow? For the tyrants, it would mean more time to oppress the weak. For the evildoers, it would mean more time to indulge their wickedness, while the hypocrites would spawn more sorrow. The money seekers would have more time for exploitation, and the indolent more time to rest. A longer life could only add to the misery of the world. Life as it is suffices for those who wish to use it profitably. If men cannot find the road to righteousness during the time they have, then they never will." After this, Yahushua and the disciples set out for Yerushalayim, passing through the borders of Yehuda and over the Yarden by way of Perea. Yahushua led the way with 6 of the 12, but as they proceeded, many of those who followed became afraid and held back, noticing what was happening. Yahushua called all the 12 to him and said, "We will soon be arriving in Yerushalayim, and there I must undergo the ordeal I am taking upon myself for the sake of mankind. I am the sacrifice to their apathy, but I depend upon you to play your parts, spreading the message of hope and the coming rule of Elohim among men. For now, I come as promised, surely the people will no longer doubt." Then the brothers Jacob and Yochanan requested a favor of Yahushua, saying, "Permit us to sit one on either side of you when you reach the state of glory." Yahushua said, "You do not understand what you ask, or the consequences. You cannot drink from my cup of sorrow or undergo my ordeal. I must carry my cross alone. For there is none with whom I can share the burden of my heart." When they insisted that they would be ready for anything, Yahushua said to them, "If you remain steadfast in the cause, you will drink from the same cup and undergo much suffering. But whether you share my future state is something over which I have no control. Not all are drawn into the same companionship." As Yahushua approached the city gate at Jericho, a large crowd gathered, among which was a humble and honest person named Micah, who worked hard to support a large family. He was anxious to see Yahusha, but being rather short and unable to see over the heads of the people, he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree along the route. When Yahusha came to the tree, he stopped underneath and called to Micah, "Come down, for today I will be your guest." The man climbed hastily down and welcomed Yahusha with pleasure. But those standing by expressed disapproval, saying, "We expected this to be a great and good man, yet he associates with men like this who are poor and not notorious for good deeds." Yahusha said, "The conscientious physician goes among those requiring his care and attention, not among those who have no need of him. If you ordered your lives according to this principle, they would be more beneficial to you in the long run." After resting in the city during the heat of the day, Yahusha left Jericho with his disciples, followed by many people. Outside the gate of departure, a blind beggar sat in the dust by the roadside. And hearing the name Yahusha on the tongues of the people, he cried out as Yahusha went by, "Son of David, have pity on me." Many of the people, hearing this, tried to silence him. But the beggar would not stop and continued shouting and oft repeating the words, "Son of David." Though he had passed, Yahusha stopped and sent a disciple back to bring the beggar to him. When they came, the disciple leading the beggar, Yahusha said to the one who had been shouting out, "What do you expect me to do for you?" The beggar replied, "Great healer, if you would only help me to see again, I would be happy." Yahusha said, "Unfruitful happiness cannot be made an end in life, but your affliction has served its purpose." Then Yahusha placed his hands over the man's eyes and told him to sit no more by the roadside, but to walk with the people. About 2 miles from Jerusalem they came to a place called Bethany, close to the Mount of Olives, where there were many fig trees. Calling 2 of his disciples to him, Yahusha said, "Go into the village just ahead, and there, at the first house, you will see a man standing by his doorway with a pitcher beside him. Go and ask him for a drink of water, and say, 'The Master comes.' He will then give you a colt which is tethered nearby. And 2 men will ask you who it is for, and you must answer, 'It is for Yahusha.'" When the colt was brought to Yahusha, some cloaks were laid over its back, and Yahusha mounted. Then, some men having gone before, the people strewed the road with flowers and brushwood. And many shouted, "The Mashiach comes. Hail to he who represents Elohim. Hail to the day that witnesses the one who will rule in the name of our father David." Many others cried, "Behold the deliverer," while other people shouted, "Come and see the vindicated king." Among the crowd were some who said, "This is not a fighting man mounted on a war horse, but a humble man on a female colt." Many mocked, while some said, "It is only a sorcerer on a mare." That was the manner in which Yahusha came to Jerusalem. But night being close, he sought shelter at a house just outside the city. The following day, Yahusha went to the great temple of the Yahudim and, going around it, came to the part where a fire was always maintained for the burnt offerings, and payment was made for its use. Here was the place where the father of Yochanan had been slain. Outside this was a hall where money was changed for those going in, the parashim not permitting this to be done within the courtyard. Seeing some men carrying vessels, Yahusha said to them, "Surely you know it is written that the temple shall not be made a thoroughfare." They turned on him, saying, "Where have you been, and who are you to rebuke us?" Whereupon there was an outbreak of fighting between those with Yahusha and others. Yahusha also overturned the tables of the money changers, saying, "You are just as bad, for you turn the house of Elohim into a marketplace." When the temple guards came to restore order, they said to Yahusha, "We should kill you for this." Yahusha replied, "Destroy this temple and in 3 days it will rise again." They, not understanding, answered, "The temple has stood for long and took 46 years to build. If you say it could be built in 3 days, you are a fool." They did not know Yahusha referred to a temple not made by hands. Going outside to the place of healing where many lay under the trees, Yahusha went among them. And because of the great power which was in him, he excelled all other healers. Seeing this, Some young men shouted, "Praise Yahweh our Elohim who has sent us the son of David." Hearing this, a number of priests came to Yahusha and said, "Are you going to cause some disturbance? Put a stop to these things they are saying." Yahusha answered, "Words of wisdom will issue from the mouths of babes. This is written in the holy books. Read them and you will learn much more." He then returned to Bethany. The priests and law scribes held a long discussion about Yahusha, for they knew the mood of the people and foresaw trouble. There was much dispute as to who he was and what he claimed to be, some saying one thing and some another.